Good evening, everybody. Good evening. Welcome to the 17th edition of Talk20 Hutch. I'm Carrie Mayu, and alongside my partners Jackson Swear and Ryan Deal and the fabulous staff of the Hutchinson Public Library, thank you for coming out tonight. Each Talk20, we like to get a sense for who is in the audience, because this experiment started 9 years ago this month in the auditorium upstairs with more than 150 people sitting closer together than you are tonight. Patsy, Darrell, and I had a hunch that Hutchinson was hungry for connection, and we were on to something. Since January 24th, 2014, we've been gathering together twice a year at the library and now online to lean into each other's stories and deepen our connection with this place we call home. We like to honor those who have been with us on the journey and celebrate those who join us along the way. So I'm going to ask you to stand up when it's appropriate. So please stand if you are one of our previous 160 presenters at Talk20 Hutch. Got a few in the room. Thanks for coming back. Good. Okay, please stand if you have attended at least half of the 17 Talk20s. Like if you do the mental math, have you done at least half in the last 9 years? Good job, guys. Gold star. Okay, and then please stand if this is your very first Talk20. Woohoo! Okay, yay. So, welcome to the family, everybody. And if you're watching live on Facebook or YouTube tonight, please say hello in the comments and tell us where you're watching from. We're so excited you're all here to experience our 10 presenters tonight. Here's how we talk about Talk20. Talk20 is not a lecture, but a gathering, an informal exchange of stories and ideas. Talk20 is an experience, a night when you should expect the unexpected. Talk20 is not exclusive, but inclusive. It runs on the idea that everyone has a story to tell. Talk20 is curiosity, open minds, humor, heartbreak, education. Talk20 is what we make it. Tonight, you're going to hear a little bit of everything. Each of our 10 presenters will have 20 slides and only 20 seconds per slide to tell a story. We'll have a brief intermission after the first 5. And then after the event, we hope you'll join us downtown at Sandhills Brewing to continue the conversations sparked by tonight's presentations. Because Talk20 doesn't end with the 10th presenter. It continues through the connections we make, the conversations we have, and the moments months from now when we recall a talk, an image, or a storyteller that stayed with us. So let's get started. Here's Ryan Deal to introduce our first presenter.
Good evening. In 2022, Allen STEM Magnet embarked on a new project called the KidWind Challenge, which is facilitated by the Kansas Energy Program. What started as, sure, we'll give it a try, turned into unimaginable opportunities for students. Tara Urban, one of this year's coaches, will walk you through their school's first year participating in the KidWind Challenge, along with members of a KidWind team.
Good evening. My name is Tara Urban, and I am one of the assistant coaches for the KidWind teams at Allen STEM Magnet. In the audience, I am joined by Principal Alma Henry and Assistant Coach Jess Brockelman, and our regional bound teams, Hutchinson Blue and the Winders. We are excited to share with you what KidWind is and our journey thus far. The KidWind Challenge is a hands-on design competition that engages students in STEM through the lens of wind. Student teams design and construct small wind turbines that they test. Teams also meet with a panel of judges to present their design process and demonstrate their conceptual knowledge of renewable energy. The KidWind project started in 2003 with Michael Arkwind, a 6th grade science teacher from California. He was unhappy with the products and the curriculum available for teaching wind energy. With an initial investment of $1,000 and a fellowship through Wright Center for Science of Education, Michael set out to develop a new approach. Since 2009, KidWind Challenge events have been successfully implemented in 37 states with roughly 35,000 students competing in 300 events. This year, Nationals is going to be held in Boulder, Colorado in late May. Last year, about this time, Alma Henry, principal at Allen, was approached by Mandy Putnam about the KidWind project. When we began this process, we never imagined where it would take us. We thought, sure, we'll give this a try. Who knew it would provide us with so many unimaginable opportunities? We started with 2 primary teams, Hutchinson Gold and Silver, and 1 alternate, Hutchinson Blue. The teams were comprised of 4th, 5th, and 6th graders. We formed a partnership with Kansas Energy Program. Kansas Energy Program provided us with wind turbine kits, generators, a wind tunnel, and various other materials to get us started. Our teams had under 3 weeks to prototype and test their wind turbine designs. Students also had to prepare a presentation for a judging panel and gain knowledge over wind energy. Our school prides itself in instilling design process thinking. Our teams quickly realized the design process would drive their decision making. We always start with the ask, what is the problem or challenge? Then we go into planning, creating, and evaluating. The questions we ask during the evaluation determine whether we need to go back through the process or not. The ultimate goal of the challenge is to produce the most wind energy measured in joules. There are no budgetary restrictions, but using recycled materials is highly encouraged. Coaches and parents may assist teams, but the design and process must be student-driven. During competitions, the team must be able to independently assemble the turbine inside of a 4-foot by 4-foot wind tunnel. During each stage of the competition, teams are evaluated on 4 components: how many joules can be produced in 30 to 60-second runs in a tunnel, 15 to 20-minute presentations presented to judges, an on-the-spot instant challenge, and a quiz to test their knowledge of wind energy. At regionals, teams competed in either 4th through 8th or 9th through 12th grade divisions. The top 2 teams in each division would advance to state. Hutchinson Blue secured a 2nd place win by producing 22 joules and a near perfect score on their presentation. Our other 2 teams were not that far behind. Our next stop was the state competition in Topeka. Hutchinson Blue made multiple changes to their turbine, including blade design and gear ratio. Teams competed in the same divisions as regional. Hutchinson Blue was able to produce double the joules and received a perfect score on their quiz. The team was named judges' favorite, putting them in 4th place, just shy of going to nationals. While we were preparing an assembly to celebrate the kids' accomplishment, we received a letter from the National KidWind Committee. The committee was so impressed with the work and knowledge of our Hutchinson Blue team that they gave us a special invitation to attend nationals. We surprised the whole school during our assembly. It took the Blue team a minute to realize the gravity of what was happening. In nationals, we competed over 4 days against teams from all over the U.S. and Mexico. We were faced with new challenges. We tested multiple wind tunnel speeds, survived what they called the Tunnel of Doom, competed instant challenges, and created a floating turbine. The highlight of nationals was getting to interact with leading professionals in the wind industry. The final day had arrived. The team had put in their hearts and souls into each and every task. As coaches, we were in awe of everything that this tiny but mighty team had achieved. No matter the outcome of the award ceremony, we were proud of them. As team by team were called, excitement began to build in us. Then the announcement came. Hutchinson Blue, you are national champions. In August, Hutchinson Blue was invited to Topeka along with other teams that represented Kansas at nationals. The teams were able to meet with Lieutenant Governor David Toland and talked about KidWind and wind energy. The teams were given a personal tour of the state capitol and even had the opportunity to climb to the very top of the dome. After nationals, our school was hungry for more KidWind. As the 22-23 school year approached, we knew we needed to provide our students with more opportunities to be involved. But how? We decided to hold our own school-wide KidWind challenge for 4th through 6th graders. We had 40 kids signed up, and we were able to create 10 teams. We gave the teams 2 weeks to design and test a turbine, as well as create a presentation. Kansas Wind Energy donated their time to help us run our mini competition. We invited several community members to form our panel of judges. The top 2 teams that will represent Allenston Magnet at regionals is Hutchinson Blue and the Winders. Winders and Hutchinson Blue have about 4 weeks left before attending regionals. Both teams have their end in mind and ultimately want to make it back to nationals. We expect both teams to work up until the very last day trying to meet their goals. Hutchinson Blue would like to produce 80 joules, and Winders are 3D printing gears and learning how to create the perfect gear ratio. I would like to take a moment and thank our staff, students, parents, and donors and sponsors. The Kansas Energy Program even graciously donated time to teach all of our students about wind energy during our fall festival this year. None of this would have been possible without each and every one of you. The support through this process has been greatly appreciated. To say that we are excited for the 2023 KidWind Challenge is an understatement. The sky is the limit for these two teams. Our teams have been working hard since January to prepare for regionals. We would love for you to follow us on Facebook, on our page at Allenston Magnet KidWind Team. Thank you for allowing us to share our experience.
Transform your home and thus reduce your stress. From bedrooms to basements, learn how to curate your possessions and improve your life. Here's Amanda from Chaos to Calm Home Organizing.
We are taught from a very young age to want things. Even our grocery stores have toy aisles. You'll notice many kid-friendly items at stores are down low on a walking child's level or at the level of the seat in a shopping cart. This is not an accident. And I just told her to smile, so that's my daughter. As we grow, the desire to acquire grows with us. Advertisers use cartoons and bright colors on packaging to entice children. We are encouraged to be greedy consumers by the media, our peers, and even our own families. That's my son. And he did not get that toy. The problem is as we transition into adulthood, we realize the things we accumulate never quench our desires. We don't feel satisfied, and we experience high levels of the stress hormone cortisol. And we aren't taught what to do with the excess that we possess. Studies show that not only does clutter increase our stress levels, it actually causes us to feel unsafe. Our brains identify items on the floor as tripping hazards and put us into a constant state of fight or flight, and we have difficulty focusing and our working memory is reduced. So what can we do to fight this consumerism epidemic and take back control of our homes and our mental health? First, we need to change our mindset about our houses and our stuff. Your house is a container, and a container has limits. That's my house. Every shelf, bin, and basket you own is also a container with limits. You can keep anything, but you can't keep everything. You can only keep what fits comfortably in your containers. Your house is not a storage facility. Keep what you actually use. That is my laundry room. So you need to declutter, to let things go that are no longer serving you. But I know what you're thinking. Every time I try to declutter, I end up making a bigger mess, get overwhelmed, and give up. Or maybe I have decluttered before, and the mess just reappears later. Well, tonight I'm here to teach you how to declutter without making a bigger mess. Yes, it is possible, and you only need 3 things: a black trash bag, a donatable donation box, and your feet. This 5-step decluttering method takes the emotions out of decluttering. So many people hit a wall when they feel attached to certain items. The first step is to take the black trash bag and just look for trash. This is the space before the trash was removed. This step is called trash bag therapy. Step 2 is to look for the easy stuff. These are items that have an established home somewhere else in your house. And here's the key to keeping this a no-mess process. When you find something that belongs somewhere else in the house, use your feet and take it there right now. I know this sounds counterproductive, but it guarantees you make progress and only progress in case you get interrupted by a phone call or the doorbell or a tiny human. Do not make keep piles. You would end up shoving them back in the space if you get interrupted. Step 3 is to look for donations. These are things you know you don't want or use. Put those directly into the donatable donation box. Make sure you use a cardboard box and not a bin that you want back. This ensures that you don't need to touch the items again and start second-guessing your decisions. Step 4 is to pick up each item and ask yourself this question. If I was looking for this item, where would I look for it first? Then take it there right now. Even if it isn't the most logical place, go with your first instinct, and you'll be able to find that item later when you need it. Step 5 is a question you ask if you can't answer the first question. If I was looking for this item, would it occur to me that I already owned it? If the answer is no, let it go. If you didn't know you owned it, you would have gone and bought a new one anyway. And this is the finished organized space. Now that you've decluttered, it's time to organize. Organizing is not a one-size-fits-all process. There are actually 4 types of organizing styles. These were discovered by Cassandra Arson of Clutterbug and named for 4 types of bugs: butterfly, bee, ladybug, and cricket. So we're going to look at some examples of each bug. This would be a butterfly. Butterflies crave visual abundance and macro organization. This means they like to see their stuff, and they put it in big, broad categories. Butterflies enjoy open shelving, pegboards, and big, clear containers with large labels. Most children are butterflies. Bees crave visual abundance and micro-organization. This means they like to see their stuff and they like to separate it into small, specific categories. Busy bees often have a lot of hobbies and projects going on at once. A ladybug craves visual simplicity and macro-organization. Ladybugs want their stuff hidden and out of sight. They use big, broad categories and solid containers. I'm a ladybug. A ladybug would use this basket to hold all the medicine without bothering to separate it by type. Finally, crickets crave visual simplicity and micro-organization. They don't want to see their stuff, and they also want it divided into small, specific categories. Once you know your organizational style, you can set up systems that work for you. Maintenance is the final step. Do 5-minute pickups throughout the day. Do the dishes every day. Practice the 1 in, 1 out rule. When you bring something new into the home, something must leave. If anybody wants that pot, I don't need it anymore. And remember, as the minimalists say, love people, use things, because the opposite never works.
Up next, Racy Luginsland will share adventures of the Great Plains Tractor Club as experienced by its members as they ride around the state attending tractor shows, competitive tractor pulls, parades, fairs, and all small town celebrations. Here's Ray with tractors riding back into history.
All right, folks, listen up. Start your engines. Get ready for a ride back into history with the Great Plains Antique Tractor Club. Parades are my favorite thing. Here, my 1947 B Farmall, going down Main Street here in Hutchinson at the 4th of July parade. Here we have Dale Connard. Dale Connard is the president of our club and presides over 60-plus members in our club, and he's an active puller, and he's an active show person, and he has a lot on the ball, and his wife, Penny, is in charge of our scholarship program. Tractor pulls are one of the big things in our club. Tractor pulls are fun, they're competitive, they're challenging, they're timed, and most of all, they measure the power of the tractor there. And that is all put together, and there's a winner and a loser every time. Pulling has some dangers. Look here, folks. See that tractor rearing up in the front end? That's a danger sign. That's measured by the committee. Okay, if that tractor gets up over 16 inches, he's flagged, he's out of the pull. And so we do have practice on safety measures. Here's Larry Peters, tractor there with his Oliver tractor, and on that pull, he's our club coordinator for the pulls all over South Central Kansas. He coordinates that sled, that our club owns that, and we lease that out to communities and towns for different events. Here we are at Plow Day, and those plows right there are what broke out the prairies here in Kansas. They're 14-inch blades, and they pull two of them behind these antique tractors like the old timers did, and they're 14 inches. Now they're going down the field with 30 feet. Here I am with my civic job. That's a whole load of tech students from here in town, and that being able to participate in the parade behind my antique tractor and in my trailer, give them a chance to show their thing. Here we are with Larry again. He's pulling our club banner that gives our distinction of being in a national organization. And here in Kansas, the Great Plains Antique Tractor Club is the premier club in the state. Here we are doing the right thing. The Jones family from Nickerston that got into trouble, and the dad got killed, and the mom and the basketball daughter got maimed. Our club at the Clear Nearly Days put on a tractor pull and a show and a parade, and we raised $10,000 for that family. Here we are on a tractorcade drive going from Haven to Burton, and we had a rest stop along the way, and we normally pull a porta potty with these tractorcades, but those guys were heading for the trees. There we are up at the barn there at Burton having lunch that day. And it was interesting because on the way home, we always traveled on country roads. Well, this car got behind us, and I could tell he was nervous, and he went around us 50 miles an hour, and yeah, I think he gave me the finger, but I didn't notice. This is Ethan Vatz. He's a second-generation tractor owner. He had that little garden tractor, it's antique, had that in the parade at the Nickerston Clear Nearly Days. Here we are at our Thanksgiving dinner. Ray and Mary Kaufman are giving thanks for our Thanksgiving meal, and that was a kind of a tragic event because we lost Ray after that, and so now he was a Pleasant View community person, and now down at Pleasant View they have established the Ray Kaufman Memorial Antique Tractor Show, and they will be mentioning him annually at their spring event. And that's Mary Kaufman there receiving that memoriam. And there we are at the Kansas State Fair. Tractors, 60 more every year, come in from all over the state of Kansas. And our local organization it helps along with that. We have the boys that are in our club are superintendent of this tractor show, and it's a nice event. Here we have our scholarship recipient, Seidel, and Bob Smith and Penny Connard are awarding him a $1,000 scholarship to Hutchinson Community College if they're enrolled in the diesel mechanics class, and so he needs that money. Okay, here's Jeff Regier, owns a tractor repair shop at Inman, one of our members, going to be recognized as member of the month, and the committee is just funding him, saying we need to pull this tractor to get it started since they don't have a mechanic on duty. And here's Max Kotwitz, our club photographer. and being presented the Member of the Month by our Vice President, Warren Pebley. And Max is responsible for this whole deal because he's got 2,000 slides of tractor events since his time with our club back 15, 20 years. Here we are at the Haven Fall Festival. That was a fun time. There was 25 tractors came to that festival to have be in the antique show. And here we have a John Deere hit and miss engine that's converted into a can crusher. And now the last one is my daughter, Cindy, is a quilter. And she cross-stitched all those tractors on that quilt and made me a quilt because she knows I travel in the Christmas parade here in Hutchinson. It's always the last Saturday before Thanksgiving, and it's cold. And now I can go to the parade and be all warm. Shut your engines down. That's the end of this show.
Fairfield USD 310 is a school district located in western Reno County that serves 285 students from 6 small towns and the rural areas in between. Under the leadership of Superintendent Betsy McKinney, USD 310 strives to help develop their students as the leaders of tomorrow. Part of leadership involves service and citizenship. Those are just some of the qualities they try to instill and that you'll hear about tonight in Training Tomorrow's Leaders Today.
Thank you very much. One of the questions I often get asked is, where in the world is Fairfield? Is it a town? What is it? No, it's a school district. We cover about 435 square miles in western Reno County. We have t-shirts that say 6 towns, 1 school, 1 family. So now you know where Fairfield's at. The things we try to do with our students is promote leadership. And we believe part of leadership is reaching out and giving back to others. Our FFA group is an excellent example of this. Not only do they work on leadership projects, but here they are shown heading out to Russell when there were devastating fires, and people out there really needed help. They needed young backs, and they needed people with gloves on their hands. This is our 3rd grade class this year. They had one of their classmates that had overcome her battle with cancer. And so along with the parent, they put together these shirts that say, in September, we wear gold, to remember those that battle against childhood cancer. And they just love it when you ask them about their shirts. Each one of our middle school and high school groups, they're divided up into advisories. And this particular group chose as their service project to clean up around campus. And so there they are pulling weeds to make things look a little better. And every student is in one of these groups, and every group chooses a project. And it's not always on campus. This year at one of our board meetings, we had some 6th graders show their leadership. They came to the board all excited to talk about their project of how they wanted to make Reno County a better place with their project entitled Kindness Rocks. And so what they ended up doing is making rocks with statements on them, and they ask everyone to take a rock out in the community. And if you find a rock, you're supposed to take it to somewhere else in Reno County. So you may have seen their project idea in your area. Be the change. That was my favorite rock of the evening. Also, we had a student that was struggling with some health issues, and so one of the advisory groups decided to have some awareness of heart disease and the American Heart Association. And as a part of that, they had a day in her honor where everybody wore shirts and celebrated what she meant to us and the fact that she overcame this battle. Our elementary STUDCO, our student council, is 3rd through 5th graders. And every year now for 8 years, they run a concession stand and they take their money and they go shopping and they fill their carts full. And they're able to provide full Thanksgiving meals to 4 or 5 families. Some of the projects are off campus. They're not that glorious. When you think about going into a small town and painting fire hydrants or painting curbs, you think, but our kids find a way to love it and enjoy it, and they smile while they're doing it, while they're giving back to their communities, and giving back is a part of leadership. Our younger kids wanted to show appreciation to our bus drivers, so they had an art project where they all made their buses, and then they stood out there with this sign as the drivers left one day to tell them that they were appreciated. And we believe showing appreciation is important for everyone to do. Dr. Randy Watson, the Commissioner of Education, came out to Fairfield to provide us with an award, and one of our students provided him back with a t-shirt. The students and the social worker had come up with the theme for character education, which was the scientific saying, "Dude, be nice." One of the best things about having toddlers to seniors on the same campus is the interactions that we can create between the two groups, whether it's serving as a big brother or a big sister, or a mentor, or a tutor, or an after-school aide, or a reading buddy. This becomes so important, having that relationship. In our elementary, we have Pride Awards where we talk about different qualities, and this particular group was honored because they had shown respect. And the teachers talk about how important respect is and what it feels like to show it and what it feels like to get it. And so we also have a lot of that going on. This is one of our custodians enjoying the unloading of the backpacks way too much. But we try to connect our families with services in Reno County at like First Call for Help. They work with us and our parents fill out the forms that need school supplies or backpacks. We pick them up, provide them to our parents at enrollment. One of my favorite things, one of my favorite programs that we have is called Senior Falcons. And we have senior citizens that come to school one morning a week and spend time with our younger students. They go on field trips with them. They play educational games. They do flashcards. And I don't know who benefits more, whether it's the children or the adopted grandparents. During the COVID pandemic, we worked with Rally Reno, the Food Bank, and several other organizations to help have a food drive to be able to provide to the needy in our community. The neat thing about that, it was during the pandemic, and we had administrators, staff, we had parents, and even students and bus drivers that volunteered to show up and distribute that food. One of our greatest needs out in our area was childcare, just like Reno County. And we began 5 years ago a daycare that's operated by the school. It has been full pretty much ever since, and we have a waiting list. And so those are our youngest Falcons on campus. Working with Child Care Aware of Kansas and the Hutchinson Community Foundation, along with parents doing fundraisers, we were able to raise enough money to be able to build a daycare playground that is safe for those students. And that just happened this year, and you want to talk about excited, watching those 2-year-olds running around in there. Our high school students can volunteer to work in the daycare for an hour each day. They are required to take emergency first aid and infant CPR, and they can choose that as a career pathway if they so desire. And we have courses that feed into that and also coordinate with colleges so that they can gain a child care certification. We are not the largest school in Reno County, but we hope when our graduates leave that they have the academic skills they need, but also that they understand the importance of being leaders. And they realize that leadership involves serving others, giving back to your community, and being strong citizens. Thank you.
A shared passion, a persistent daughter finding a voice. Slow down there a little bit. Please welcome Steve Becker and his daughter, Beth White, on Clear the Podcast.
We're sharing. Yeah. Good evening. Daryl was released in 2014 and examined the case against Adnan Syed. The podcast brought to light multiple issues in the case prosecution and had many of the 39 million listeners in the first year alone questioning his guilt. In fact, just a few months ago, Adnan was exonerated after 23 years. This podcast fueled the desire for me to one day have my own. After the passion took root, I knew exactly who I wanted to join me on this journey. The best storyteller I know, my dad. What made it even more perfect is we had that shared passion of bringing light to wrongful convictions. Unfortunately, as the picture illustrates, he was a little reluctant.
As a young and inexperienced judge, I sought counsel from my colleague, Porter Brown. And the following day, there was a note on my desk that read, "When faced with a decision, make that decision as wisely as possible and then forget it. The point of absolute certainty never arrives." That axiom is embedded into our criminal justice system. I told a friend I was doing a podcast about wrongful convictions, and she responded, "I did not know that was a thing." Look at those numbers, particularly the bottom number, 190 death row exonerees in the last 50 years. So, yeah, people, it's a thing.
Within the first 2 months, this docuseries about exonerations had over 20 million views. It made huge waves in a popular belief that prevalence of being wrongfully convicted and brought the topic to daily conversation. It only took 4 years of daughterly persuasion, to ultimately sway the big guy into doing the podcast with me. I must admit, a good year and a half of that process was just spent explaining what a podcast was and where to find it. But we got there. With a little bit of luck and a lot of help from our talented producer, Christopher, we were on our way. A few years into the nagging process, Dad sent me a link on Messenger, as dads do. The link said, "If we do a podcast, this should be our first story." This is Jimmy Gardner. He was a semi-professional baseball player that was wrongfully convicted for a crime he did not commit. In fact, one of the crimes he was charged with, he was pitching during the game.
We were honored to devote 2 episodes to Jim McCloskey, the founder of Centurion Ministries, the first organization to provide assistance to inmates who maintain their innocence. They have freed 67 people through that organization.
This is Eddie Lowry. He was in the Army and stationed at Fort Riley. After hours of interrogation, he admitted to a crime he did not commit. He was denied access to his attorney and told he failed a polygraph. 10 years in prison, and 2 decades later, he was finally exonerated.
Curtis McCarty served 19 years on death row in Oklahoma, a state that likes to use its death chamber. He was convicted twice and received the death penalty 3 times. He was exonerated based upon prosecutorial misconduct and false forensic testimony.
This is 3 of the Groveland 4, Sammy Shepard, Walter Irvin, and Charles Greenlee, not pictured as Ernest Thomas, who was shot before the arrest 14 times in total by a sheriff-led posse. Despite no evidence of their guilt and whether a crime had even been committed, they were tortured until they falsely confessed.
Chris Williams, Philadelphia, convicted of 4 murders, all drug-related, sentenced to death, served 29 years. Exonerated through the work of the Conviction Integrity Unit, a division within the district attorney's office. Just last month, 1 year after his exoneration, he was shot in the street. Lamont McIntyre, convicted of murder in Wyandotte County, Kansas at the age of 17, served 23 years, exonerated based upon official misconduct, specifically a corrupt captain of detectives, represented by Centurion Ministries and the Midwest Innocence Project.
This is Rosa Jimenez, a pregnant mother who was working as a daycare provider. She was not fluent in English and had a language barrier between her investigator. She was incarcerated for 18 years before she was exonerated.
Geronimo Platt, highly decorated Vietnam vet, high-ranking officer with the Black Panther Party, convicted of murder based upon false testimony of an FBI informant, spent 27 years in prison. He was exonerated by the work of Johnny Cochran and Centurion Ministries.
This is Albert Wilson, a young athlete and KU student. His case gained national attention due to the inconsistency of sentencing received in Douglas County. He was convicted of the crime despite a lack of physical evidence that a crime took place and video evidence that supported his chain of events. He was released and his case was dismissed in December of 2021. This is Ronald Cotton. He was falsely convicted by victim's eyewitness testimony. After 10 years in prison, he was exonerated based on DNA. Ronald and the victim, Jennifer Thompson, not only found forgiveness with each other, but considered each other best friends and family. They have co-authored a book and currently travel the world speaking about wrongful convictions.
Philip Blevins was one of 3 co-defendants, all wrongfully convicted of rape and murder in Mississippi based upon false confessions obtained through beatings and the threat of the death penalty. Blevins served 30 years before exonerated by DNA, which identified the true perpetrator. Blevins died 3 years after his release.
This is LaQuanda Faye Jacobs. She was 16 and had just returned home from church, still wearing her white choir dress when she was arrested. The crime she was falsely charged with was just one of many gang-related at the time. Multiple issues concerning the evidence and prosecution, and she was still convicted and sentenced to life. She would spend the next 2.5 decades before she was released.
And we leave you with George Stinney. He is the youngest person to be executed in the United States. He was escorted into the death chamber at the age of 14 years. He weighed 94 pounds, and he was carrying a Bible. He was too small for the electric chair, so they used his Bible to prop him up. He was exonerated 70 years later. Thank you.
Let's hear it one more time for all of our presenters in the first half of our Talk 20. Let's also have a shout out to everyone that is watching us online from all over Kansas as well as out of state too. That's wave at them. We have now reached the point for our intermission, so please feel free to mingle, talk about the different Talk 20s, and enjoy. And we'll be back soon.
All right, welcome back, everyone. What a great night so far. I've had here. And I think you'll enjoy the second half as well. I'm certainly looking forward to it. Policing where you live can be a lesson in navigation of community relationships. On the beat, Wesley Vaughn is a police officer tasked with keeping the community safe. Off the beat, he is a community member with hopes, dreams, and aspirations like anyone else. Please welcome Wes with On and Off the Beat, Policing Where I Live.
Just a little bit taller. There we go. All right. Let me first talk about the person who inspired me for this service, because that's what policing is. It's a service, and it's my mom. She worked for 30 years in SRS, DCF now, and everything that she did during that time also helped me. And one of the great things about being a police officer and serving the community that you live in is you are part of an experience that a lot of people don't see. There's good things, there's bad things, there's horrible things, but you do it with everybody else on your side. But you also have people that aren't cops, those who are your friends, those who are your colleagues in different agencies, and they are also part of your group and your family, and they work with you to make the community better. And this one is one of my favorite ones. We're out here in the community, 3 different instincts. We have our politician, we have the law enforcement, and then we have the community members that care and they're doing something for very little pay. All 3 of us, for the most part. But it's more than that. It's sitting down as a law enforcement officer within the community. These are all people that I have known since I was small. That's how far back I go in this community. And now they're listening to me when the reverse was true when I was a child. And being a service member of this community is also being able to get out of your comfort zone. And believe me, as a small town Kansas kid, this was not what I had dreamed law enforcement was going to be. But the gal was very, very nice and sweet. And so it opened up my mind about who I should serve. But also, you have to be able to service those who you serve with and have a little bit of fun, sometimes at their expense, but also as a way to unwind. And going past the law enforcement, what can I do to make my community better on my own time? And this is what I did with the Kansas Leadership Foundation. And as you can see, Michael Job is there. He recently ran, and he's a friend of mine that we went to this on our own time. All that together, though, you have to start giving back just on some of the fun stuff that you can do, but also things that make the community better and grow. This is us and my family, including my mom, as we're starting to get our geek out on. And sometimes they can be a burden. As you can see from the photo right there, I had a good time, but the joke, which I can't remember and I don't want to remember, it just left me like, but it's not just the family, it's also the friends that are out there. If you did not know, I'm a big geek and I'm a very strong geek. So don't make fun of geeks. Okay. But over the years, this group, which came from that small little group right there, has grown. And it only grows if we as a community don't come together and we talk and we're open. That lady that I talked about, it starts from that, being able to get out of your comfort zone. But with everything that goes on, that's a lot of time. I don't have a lot of time for myself, but you also have to spend time on yourself to be a good cop is also to spend some me time. And that little dog there at Wrongful is my best buddy when I'm out, when I just want to spend some time. But if I can't have the dog, I definitely have the car to drive around in Reno County. And this was my dad's car. It's still my dad's car. I don't think of it as mine. And he was gracious enough to let me take care of it after he passed on. And so when I'm in that vehicle, I know he's riding with me. But if I can't do that, well, then I have my home, my own little castle, if you will. And I like to grow things. I like to roll dice and I like to grow things. That's a pretty good combination. But one of the things I grow is flowers for the bees. But I also raise rabbits and chickens. And this is me after a very horrible winter storm where I had to nurse a rabbit back up to health. And that is what I do, I hope, as a cop, is I'm there to help people when they have a horrible day. That rabbit lived for a very long time, by the way. I find a joy in raising these things, rabbits and chickens and growing things. It helps center myself and makes me a better person, which helps me become a better cop to you all. That little guy is Sable, and Sable was a great deer. Somehow or another, she got loose and she ran her own life, which, as any parent would know, that's what we all want our children to do. But don't be surprised, everybody's got a prima donna in their family. And this is Osiris. Of course, he's going to be a prima donna with that type of name. But despite all that, I have to give a lot of credit to the one person who's always got my back, and that would be my wife, Elaine. She has been through this extraordinary journey with me with HPD, and I think I've become a better officer and a person because of her. That's my story. Thank you for letting me talk to you about it.
Living on a dairy farm has given Amanda Miller a unique opportunity to experiment with making homemade cheeses. Though it's not a necessary skill, she loves how it grounds her in the slow-down process of making her own food and finding joy in simple things. Home cheesemaking is a study in contrasts, as it is easy and complex, traditional and innovative, local and global, and also a neat party trick with delicious results. Here's Amanda with the joys of being cheesy.
This is where the joy of cheese starts for me, in a couple ways. First of all, it's the milking parlor on our family dairy farm where all the milk comes from that makes cheese possible. But it's also the man that makes the cheese important. I was actually supposed to be talking today about my husband Brian's horrific farming accident and his incredible recovery, but I can't yet. But because I have walked in the darkness of the shadow of death, walking in the simple rhythms of life are so much brighter. This picture is not related to cheese, except for how cheesy that smile is. But I can't give a slideshow without showing a picture of our almost 2-year-old son, Benson, falling in his daddy's boot prints. And because of the trauma I have experienced, when I thought I would never be able to care about little things again, now I can find deeper grounding joy in the daily grace of something as silly as making cheese, or in the heifer's curious stares, or in the sharp beauty of white clouds against blue skies. I notice more of the ways that God meets me in the little things. But enough on theology. Let's move on to cheese. I'm going to start by walking you through the basic process of homemade mozzarella in just a few slides. I chose mozzarella because it's so universal, delicious, and plain fun. This is what I call playing with your food at its best. Kids can have their slime and Play-Doh, whatever. I'll have my mozzarella. It might sound intimidating to make cheese at home, but here you can see all it takes to make a batch of mozz in about half an hour. We have a pot of milk. This is 4 gallons, but if you don't have an endless supply of milk, I suggest starting with a smaller batch. And while, of course, I'm partial to raw milk, you can absolutely make this with store-bought. Other than that, we have 2 tablespoons of citric acid, half a teaspoon of rennet, and some water to dissolve them in. All cheeses need some kind of acid to coagulate, which is a much better goal than it sounds. There's a ton of science involved, but you don't have to understand it all for it to work, so that is fortunate. This is what that pot of milk looks like after stirring in those ingredients, heating it slightly, and then within a few minutes, it all turns into a pot of milk jello, which is soft enough to cut with a butter knife, but not liquid anymore. We cut it into a grid, and then as we slowly heat it, then it will start to clump and release more liquid. So different cheeses use different acids, but they all work by lowering the pH of the milk and causing the casein proteins to unfold and clump together again. Rennet is an enzyme found in calves' stomachs to help them digest their mother's milk, and that helps by adding structure, and it actually changes the charge of the protein particles, allowing them to link together and provide that kind of structure. So the liquid will continue to release as we gently heat it. The higher the heat, the tighter the curd, and the more whey is separated out. Then I can pull out a clump of cheese, and it's the most fun part, except for the eating. So we actually get to stretch it and pull it, kind of like taffy. The hardest part is making yourself stop playing with it so that it's still nice and creamy. So after just a minute or two of stretching and kind of wrapping it around in my hands, we have fresh mozzarella. I always salt it really well, as salt transforms its flavor from fine to mind-blowing. In the bowl, you can see some of the creamier whey, which I sometimes use, but the rest of the whey I either pour down the drain or give it to my chickens if I'm feeling very generous. And then we have cheese. So it doesn't look like a lot in comparison to the 4 gallons of milk we started with, but it's still 3 or 4 pounds of cheese. It slices, it cubes, it melts. It feels like a mini miracle every time. I never get tired of that transformation of milk into cheese. So that was easy. There are even actually easier cheeses to make at home. Many don't even use any rennet or specific cultures, relying on vinegar or lemon juice for their magic, requiring only milk and salt in addition. They often tend to be crumbly since they don't have the rennet for structure, and some super sketchy ones from my old Mennonite cookbook use naturally occurring lactic acid in milk that is left out to sour on purpose for far too long. I tried that once. We can't scoop the curds out with these crumbly cheese, so I pour them through a clean paint straining bag that catches all the curds. And then sometimes I will also wrap it in cheesecloth. Aha, that's what that's for. And then weight it. I've tried weighting it with a dumbbell perched on top of it, and let's just say I don't do that anymore. But I can sandwich it between 2 plates until I get a real press. So that pressing it makes it firmer and drier. Or we could add milk or cream or yogurt and turn it into like a ricotta or a cottage cheese. And it's just exciting to see what all you can do. But it's impossible to talk about cheese without talking about eating it. So the fresh cheeses I make don't have the depth or intensity of flavor that aged cheese can. It's pure and creamy, makes it very incredibly eatable and versatile. Something as simple as garden cherry tomatoes with fresh herbs and marinated mozzarella could be on a restaurant tasting menu anywhere, but it's in my kitchen. A rustic tomato galette like this looks a little fancier, it takes a little more, but it's still incredibly easy and something that we can make with what we have here in Kansas. I even make a cheater cream cheese by blending ricotta into an ultimately rich and creamy magic that I can't believe the world is not eating yet. It's spreadable right out of the fridge, high protein, no preservatives or packaging. Yes, I do eat it with a spoon straight out of the jar. Just about every day. Another aspect of home cheese making that brings me joy is that while being hyper-local, it also simultaneously allows me to travel the globe by plate. This is a traditional Ukrainian Easter bread, which I guess we'll see what the next speaker says about it. Don't know if it looks right or not. My attempts at the different cheese spreads that go with it. Now I'm feeling a little embarrassed. But cheese has been made around the globe for thousands of years, and we can explore so many things and so many cuisines and cultures just by starting at cheese. Fusing my Mennonite heritage and Midwestern locale with dishes from around the globe is one of my favorite things. So we have an Indian palak paneer, with homemade cottage cheese, combining the spices and techniques from 8,000 miles away with milk and garden produce from 8 yards away. Cheese was one of Benson's first words. Benson, can you say it now? Okay, maybe later. He's out there somewhere. And we are proud to be raising a young cheese lover in the way that he should go. And I hope that growing up connected to the slow down processes of his food deepens his gratitude forever. And like life, cheese is always best when enjoyed together, as cheesy as that sounds. And it has been an honor to be here with you talking about the simple joys of cheese.
Next, Esmeralda Tovar-Mora is here in honor of Darrell Pope, a hero in our community who resonates justice, freedom, and peace. Mr. Pope's tenacity for a better tomorrow and love for his community is evident through his actions and efforts for civil rights and local policy. This is his story.
There we go. Darrell Pope was born and raised here in Hutchinson, Kansas. Back when black and brown families did not have access to the hospital, a black doctor delivered one of his best friends, and then ran across the street and delivered him at home. They were born in the same day and around the same time. He attended K-12 here and graduated from Hutchinson High School. Black and brown families primarily lived on the south side of a divided line in Hutchinson. His family lived north of it, so he attended school on the north side. There were maybe one of 3 families that went to that school that had black children. The name calling and different treatment was something that he had to learn came with attending school north of that dividing line. It was more prominent. There was a memory that he recalls from a May festival where children came together and had different kinds of activities. One of the things was the dance winding the maypole. You would have partners for it, but in his case, they had to call the girl that was going to be his partner's parents and find out if it was all right for her to be his partner for the May to take part in it. Hutchinson had a drugstore on the corner a block or so east of Liberty, now HMS 8. It was normal to go there and then go to the soda fountain and get a cherry Coke or a Green River drink. All the kids would go and hang out, but when he went, he would always have to get it in a container to go and couldn't sit in there with the rest of his white classmates. Similar treatment came from the youth center and skating rink, where children of color had separate nights available to them from white children, usually on school nights versus Friday nights, to being forced to sit in the balcony of 3 out of the 4 theaters in town, excluded from one, the State Theater, now the Family Community Theater, since it didn't have a balcony, and restaurants reminding him he couldn't sit with his friends for a slice of pie and a glass of milk. The Rainbow Bread Beth's Baking Company was the place to work after school for their hours and their wages if you were in high school. His friends encouraged Daryl to apply as help was needed badly. The man that owned it, who was also the one interviewing, told him that they did not hire people of color. Daryl was a teenager wanting to earn his money for the future and was denied because of the color of his skin. Good job opportunities for children of color were scarce, and many of the opportunities available to his white classmates were intentionally not available to him, yet he never stopped looking. He worked for a shoe shining company owned by a Greek man called Hutchinson Hat Works, running the hat cleaning machine. After graduation, Daryl worked at Cessna Industrial Hydraulics, renamed Eaton Corporation before it closed. The company made gliders that would be used in the D-Day invasion. He recalls that if you talk to anyone who grew up in town, that they either worked there, had a relative who worked there, or knew someone who worked there. It was a major employer at the time, and he worked there for 44 years and retired almost 20 years ago. Because Cessna was considered one of the best places to work in town, Daryl applied for a higher position as an inspector. He was turned down because, according to the interviewer, it would offend someone who was working near him and cause them to quit. That it was going to take some time, that it wasn't being shoved down people's throats, that a black man was working beside them. The picture shows him standing beside his son for his first steps. And housing was also an uphill battle for Daryl and his wife. Turned down even if you met the rest of the requirements with the excuse of, we would rent to you, but the neighbors might not like it. That dividing line from earlier, north of 11th versus south of 11th. Landlords would ask Daryl if he had looked at houses south of the line, and he told them no. When urged again, he would tell them, if it's such a good deal, why don't you live down there? Daryl's aunts and grandparents told him stories of his uncles who demanded service at barber shops, Wild West Justice style. He remembers his father and Chester I. Lewis's father lingering to overhear the discussions as they organized for civil rights. A family man, he has been married to Zenobia since 1958. They share 2 sons, 8 grandchildren, and 7 great-grandchildren. He is currently the vice president of the NAACP, after serving as president for the local unit here in Hutchinson, and is an active member of Macedonia Missionary Baptist Church, serving as chairman of the deacon board there, as well as a black belt. On the day when Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated, Darrell and Sam Price were practicing karate at a studio in Wichita. Hearing sirens and seeing people running as they emerged from the studio, they asked a passerby what had happened and were told the news of Dr. King's death. Darrell realized in that moment that his community needed leadership if the civil rights movement was to withstand such fierce opposition. He made the decision to reopen the Hutchinson NAACP chapter and to serve as president for as long as he was needed. He is pictured at the NAACP office in Baltimore, Maryland. With support from his wife Zenobia, Darrell sustained that focus, serving as president of the Hutchinson NAACP until 2021, completing 52 years of volunteer leadership as president and continues to serve our local NAACP as vice president. Darrell's term of service far surpasses that of any other president in the history of the organization. Darrell Pope was shaped from childhood by his family's strong sense of dignity and pride in standing for freedom and equality in a time when he couldn't go with his white classmates, co-workers, or friends to do what a child, a teenager, a husband, or a father should be able to do: live freely, work freely, and connect freely with others. His impact on civil rights in central Kansas cannot begin to be quantified. From being instrumental in organizing the Human Relations Commission here, advocating for individuals and influencing local policy, supporting the growth and funding of public schools, its programs, supporting youth and adult organizations alike to engage in promoting civil rights, liberty, and justice, being a part of meetings to promote, support, and advocate for minority voices, urging our community to support and include minorities in decision-making, investigating complaints of discrimination in Reno County, and for his efforts and bravery in the face of adversity for over 50 years. He is the humble, unsung hero of civil rights. He says, and I quote, "You have got to put as much effort in recruiting diversity as was once put into discouraging it." The most evidence of his influence can likely be found in the many people that he has mentored, given freely of his time, wisdom, and friendship to empower others to work for change and equality. He is happiest working with horses, watching football, attending church, traveling, and spending time with his family, especially his great-grandchildren, and attending as many of their extracurricular activities as possible. Darrell Pope prefers to serve rather than to receive recognition. That is why he's not standing up here. Those of us who owe him much wish to take this opportunity to shine a light on his leadership and service to the NAACP and our community. It should have never been this way, but you did it anyways. We must continue to learn from our past so that we can continue to move forward for the future, for justice, freedom, and peace. 20 slides will never be enough, but it's a good start. Thank you.
Dimitri's a lot taller. I'll help him out. Well, now it's too tall for me, but probably right for him. Dimitriy Vakulenko is a native of Ukraine living in Hutchinson, and tonight he's here to tell us about the spirit of Ukraine. Please welcome Dimitriy.
Hello, everybody. Good evening, or as we say in Ukraine, добрый вечер. And just before I start, I just want to tell you about this cheesy presentation. First of all, it made me hungry, but secondly, that bread, Easter bread, we call Pascha, looked very good, and I hadn't had it for a long, long time. So if you make it next year, should contact so we can try it. Okay, here we go. I grew up in Ukraine, a country in Eastern Europe that used to be a part of Soviet Union. I had a happy and peaceful childhood. Every summer, our family would go on a beach vacation in Crimea, in the southern part of Ukraine on the Black Sea. As our country transitioned from Soviet-style communist-controlled economy to a modern capitalism system, many people's lives were improving in Ukraine. During Soviet times, it was prohibited to travel abroad. When Ukraine became independent, people started traveling to Europe for business and vacations, enjoying sightseeing, cuisine, and shopping. Ukrainians wanted to become part of the European Union, but Russian political and economical ties and influence in Ukraine was still very strong. Russia did not want to let go Ukraine and let it be part of the West. In 2013, under Russian influence, Ukrainian president shut down country efforts to become a part of European Union. This caused a mass protest in Ukraine. President ran away to Russia, and Vladimir Putin used this opportunity of chaos to take over Crimea and eastern Ukraine. Since that time, there has been ongoing war in the eastern Ukraine. And on February 24, Russia launched a full-scale attack on Ukraine territory. They started with launch on hundreds of missiles to eliminate our air defense system and military bases. And then they followed with the tanks and troops. Russians were attacking from everywhere in Ukraine, and hundreds of thousands of soldiers, tanks, and their mission was to capture Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine, and replace Ukrainian government with a new one that will be loyal to Russia. There were huge traffic jams and people escaping Ukraine, people in fear of Russian army. They were predicting that Kyiv will be captured in 72 hours. Russian forces were just 20 miles north of Kyiv. Around 8 million people have been displaced from Ukraine to Europe. This is about 20% of the Ukrainian population. Roughly 18 million Ukrainians left, while 10 millions have since returned to the country. The largest outflow of the people of Ukraine was on March 7, when over 200,000 people fled the Ukraine just in one day. Since early May, that number of people returning to Ukraine is growing, and it's been roughly about 40,000 people coming back to Ukraine every day. After more than a month of the siege of the Ukraine capital, Russian forces suffered significant losses, and they decided to withdraw from the central and northern part of the Ukraine. This was possible because of the bravery of Ukrainian people and the shipments of the weapons system from the West. From the first day of the war, there were lines of volunteers in Ukraine that wanted to join the forces. So former school teachers, IT specialists, baristas became warriors and were fighting for freedom. The Ukrainian army were successfully pushing Russians back, and our Western allies realized that Ukraine is not going to lose and is able to defend itself. So we started to receive more modern and sophisticated weapons, and with the new weapons shipments during the summer of the last year, Ukrainian army was able to take back the cities that we captured. And okay, sorry, I'm a little bit slow. So most of the Ukrainian people, they live in apartment buildings, and when Russians realized that they're not able to take quickly Ukraine with troops and tanks, they started to send a lot of missiles and rockets and bombs to destroy our power grid. Russian missiles and bombs are not very accurate and often hit apartment buildings, which led to heavy casualties. So during Soviet Union time, Ukraine nickname was the breadbasket of the country. Thanks to the fertile black soils and the favorable climate, Ukraine produced about 40% of grain in Soviet Union. Nowadays, agriculture plays a huge role in the country economy, and Ukraine is top 10 of the grain exporters in the world. Because of the war, many of the farm fields are polluted with mines and unexploded ammunition and destroyed military equipment. It will take years at the end of the war to clean up this and be able to safely use the country, the farmland. This slide, I would like to talk about the amazing worldwide support of Ukraine since the beginning of the war. Every newspaper, every magazine were covering the development of war in Ukraine. Most of the countries condemned this war and asked Russia to withdraw the troops and start peaceful negotiations. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and the spirit of Ukrainian people become the Time magazine Person of the Year. As the Time article read, Zelensky's success as a wartime leader has relied on the fact that courage is contagious. It spread through Ukraine's political leadership in the first days of the invasion, as everyone realized that the president has stuck around. During the first days of the invasion, foreign government offered Zelensky help with the evacuation, and he famously replied, "I need ammunition, not a ride." In support of the Ukraine, blue and yellow flags started to appear everywhere in the world. I even noticed last spring driving through Kansas City, there was a bridge at night and had the blue and yellow lights, and it was really beautiful. Ukraine became a symbol of the fight for freedom and democracy. Numerous charities and non-profit organizations were raising funds and supplies and sending it to Ukraine. Hutchinson hosted several fundraisers to support Ukraine. And in July, we hosted a fundraiser, United with Ukraine, which was organized by local Ukrainian native and young professional and Rotary Club organizations. Truly, the whole world was cheering for the spirit of Ukraine. And I would like to finish my presentation with the words of gratitude to American people and United States government for their support of Ukraine and its people, people of Ukraine in the fight for the freedom. And personally, I realized that without this support, we would not be able to resist the aggression from Russia this year and last year. Thank you.
In September 2022, Sandhills Brewing faced a crisis due to outdated regulations. After a blunt, direct plea for help that went viral, the local community and people from far and wide came out in force to voice their support for the brewery's survival with their wallets and appetites. Please welcome Pippin Williamson with Community Goes Viral and Saves a Business.
Hello, everyone. My name is Pippin Williamson, and I am one of the co-owners and founders of Sandhills Brewing, which is a small, very little microbrewery located here in Hutchinson. We're in downtown, just a few blocks away over by the farmers market. We also have a second location up in Kansas City that is run by my identical twin brother. We have been here since about 2018 with the goal of being a small, community-minded place for people to gather, have good conversations, enjoy a beer or two, and most importantly, we are a local place for the local community. Tonight, I want to tell you a very, very brief version of a story of crisis and triumph. This story is actually very in-depth, and there's a lot of details to it, so this is greatly abbreviated. A few months ago, in September, we faced a bit of a crisis. So on September 19, 2022, it was a normal business day for our little community-oriented place. We are going about our daily operations. We are getting our tap room ready to go. We were working on our production schedule. We are scheduling our staff. We are buying our ingredients. We're doing all of the normal things that a business does on its day-to-day operations. At the same time, we are also doing a little bit of back-end work, which is mostly what my job in the brewery is today. with going through a liquor license renewal process. And it was going mostly okay. It's a not very eventful thing, other than it's this little piece of paper that is fundamentally required for you to own a liquor-based business. Well, 24 hours later, after it was business as usual, we learned a horrifying truth, which was that our business was going to be forced to close. And we had 10 days to potentially save it. And it was going to be forced to close due to some antiquated Prohibition-era style laws that set a requirement for us and food sales. In short, we have to sell a lot of food. And unfortunately, we were not very close. We were $34,000 short. Now, to put that in perspective, we sell about $24,000 a year in food. So we had 150% of our food sales, and we needed 10 days. We realized this and decided to send out an open plea for help because our other efforts had failed. And so we sent out an email that said, this is not a joke. Unfortunately, I wish it was. We need your help, and we need a lot of it. Because if you do not, we are going to close. And 45 minutes later, after an email, a number of social media posts happened to find some way to go viral through our local community, across the state, and across the nation, and actually even overseas, the public answered. And they answered in droves. That was... Oh. Uh-oh. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to keep going. So, they answered in droves. That picture was a picture of our patio, and it had about 500 people on it. For the record, a standard day at Sandhills Brewing is, 20, 30, 40 people. And that continued for the next 5 hours. People lined up from the counter to the front door, down the hallway, and down out to the street for over 5 hours straight to buy anything and everything that we could sell them that constituted as food. Now, we started the day with $100 of food inventory in the building. We ended the day with $16,500 in food sales. And this worked for a lot of different reasons that we are still trying to figure out today. It went on for the next 5 days as hundreds upon hundreds and thousands of people came into our building and bought food, enjoyed beers, and had a good time. Volunteers came out of the woodwork. Dozens and dozens of people stepped up to us and said, how can I help? They carried trash, they did dishes, they ran food orders, they went grocery shopping because we didn't have any food in the building. And this plea and this ask for help was heard around the country and around the state. It gathered a lot of news and media attention locally, around the state, regional, nationally, and even all the way up to our state government. Our Lieutenant Governor, David Tolan, made an unplanned detour through Hutchinson after he heard about what was happening, and he paid us a little visit. And he gave us over an hour and a half of unplanned time to hear about the problem that we were facing, about the community's response to our problem, and what we were doing and what the state could possibly do to help address this issue going forward. So we started this problem with 10 days to solve the problem. 10 days that I'll tell you what, I woke up each morning thinking there is no way. We had already made our plans to shut down the business because it was the only thing we could do. But in 5 days, we beat our goal of 34,000. And in fact, we actually did 42 plus thousand. Now, there's a really important thing that I want to ask, and I want you to all think about. And that is this. Why? Why did it work? Because you know what? There are thousands of people and thousands of businesses that ask for help every day, and they don't get it. So why did we get helped? I believe it's for a couple of big reasons. And the first and foremost is because we asked. We shared bluntly and openly, and were transparent, and more importantly, we were vulnerable, and we bared our soul and said, this is it, and we need help. But we also gave our customers and our community something to fight for. We gave them something to be included in. This was something that they believed should be here. They believed it was a value add to the community, and they enjoyed it. They liked it, they wanted to participate, and we gave them a way to be involved and to help this thing stay here. In a way, a sense of ownership in their community. And it showed that the community wanted it to succeed. They wanted the plan to succeed. We started day one on Tuesday thinking there is no way this is going to work. And then Wednesday night, we were close. Thursday night, we were close, but still not there. But every one of those days, because of the way the community came out, we knew that it was going to be possible because the community wanted it to happen. So it turns out that Hutchinson, Kansas, we know that we enjoy a few beers. We also know that we really like tacos because this is not the first time the community of Hutchinson has come out to support and save a local business. So Sandhills Brewing is a small business located here in Hutchinson, Kansas, built for the community, by the community, and it is here today because of the community. And if you haven't been, I hope you'll join us someday. Thank you very much.
All right, great. Thank you, Pippin. I'm glad we had a pure entrepreneur up here to just roll with it. Let's give all of our presenters one more round of applause. Thank you for sharing your stories.
And remember that if you want to keep the spirit of the community going, you're welcome together at Sandhills Brewing tonight so you can actually visualize it in person.
I imagine that if a lot of you show up, it'll look very similar to the last half of the slides. Thank you to Christopher Acker with the Foxtrot for running our live stream to YouTube and Facebook tonight. And thank you to Lucas Singleton of the Hutchinson Public Library, who will make each talk into its own video. For the record, the computer died. None of the technical difficulties were any of their fault. We will share these videos alongside the full Talk20 archive at talk20hutch.com in the coming months, so you can return to your favorite talk again and share it with your friends who couldn't make it tonight.
And thank you always to Greg Wamsley, Kate Lewis, and all of the staff at the Hutchinson Public Library. They provide the space, the seats, the equipment, and the power to make Talk20 happen. The rest of us just show up with our PowerPoint and our speaking notes. So we are grateful for their support. We ask that you thank them by coming back to the library for their other programming, to see the wonderful art exhibits upstairs in the auditorium, or to simply check out a book.
If you have an idea for a story, or you know someone who should share their story, please contact us through our Facebook page or talk20hutch.com.
So we jump back and forth. Looking ahead, we look forward to gathering again for the 18th Talk20 on July 21st, 2023. And
thank you all for coming.